What is your addiction? What is that thing that you are addicted to? Because I want to talk really frankly about that stuff. And we might as well start by talking off about this young kid. And this is Brian Rose at 7 years old, sitting in our front garden, right? He looks pretty happy, this kid, right? He was pretty happy. This is, I think, right before my parents got divorced. This is San Diego, California. This is in a suburban neighborhood where nothing bad happened on the block. There was no crime. There was no physical abuse. There was no yelling in my home. I mean, seriously, it doesn't get more vanilla than where I grew up on this street. Ball games and school and all that stuff. But this kid here was looking at a life ahead of him of substance addiction. And I don't know what it was. You know, I have a surname of Benedict that I passed on to my middle son, my second son. And my grandfather had that surname, and he was quite prone to drinking, my grandpa Benedict. And I don't know if it's genetic or not, but there was no reason why this kid fell in love with alcohol, and my brother and sister really didn't. But it was something about me. Maybe it's born, maybe it's genetic. I don't know. That's probably pointless. But the truth is, this is one of the burdens that I was given to deal with all my life. Now, maybe there was some magnification because the trauma of my parents being divorced or any of that stuff. I don't know. But this young kid was given this thing to deal with, and I think I remember my first drink was probably 11 or 12 years old. I brought back some sake from Japan because I went there to stay with a family when I was 11 years old and I think 12 years old. I stayed for 4 weeks. I fell in love with Japanese culture, and I brought back sake, and I remember getting angry at my mom. I used to get angry a lot, slam doors. I still get angry sometimes. And I used to come back to my room and drink some sake out of this bottle. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I watched tough guys in movies have a drink when they needed to let off steam. I don't know. Maybe it was cultural. But this is when it started. But it was when I got into high school, 15 years old, when my mom took me to Europe. I remember I went to Oktoberfest in Germany, and I drank. And I was like, in Europe, they would serve me as well, because in America, you can't have a drink till you're 21. And I just thought this was super cool. I felt grown up. I liked changing my consciousness. And Brian was kind of hooked on alcohol since then. And so throughout my high school, I was definitely drinking on weekends. I was scoring alcohol. I still kept my grades up really well. But I was definitely dabbling at that point. And this was just maybe me trying to be grown up. I think I liked drinking. I don't know what it was. But when I got to the fraternity house at MIT when I was 18 years old, that's when it all got kicked into high gear. Because I was with 50 guys. There was no adult supervision. We owned our own house. And basically, you could do whatever you want, whenever you want. And you could always find someone to drink with. And so and it was a fraternity house, for God's sake. So we had parties every week. We'd bring people over, and that's really where I started finding a lot of people to drink with. And it was just something you did. And I think I started drinking every night or every other night there. And it became something I lived with. But at the same time, I still was going to MIT, and I managed to get straight A's my first semester of grades in my sophomore year. And I managed to be fairly functional, but I got into this point where I just loved hanging out with the guys and drinking, and it's something that I did. And I carried this forward in my life into Wall Street, where there was more of people doing that, and that got into substances like drugs, cocaine, and heroin. And I got into a situation where finally my addictions and my substances were really taking over my life. And I think I went to them to find some solace from myself, to find some break. And also, I have a very demanding personality on myself. And I think at some point, I needed to even take a break from me. And that's why I went into these substances. I also wasn't really connected to anyone else. I didn't feel like I had a purpose. And I felt really isolated. And I think a lot of people that drink alone and use substances feel isolated. And so they just want to kind of go somewhere where they can feel a little bit happy for a little while. And what it does is it actually isolates you more. And this was my story, and I pretty much drank every night for about 25 years of my life. I drank right through my heroin addiction, my overdoses, my getting off of heroin, but I kept going, and it was the one thing that I could never really kick. And it wasn't only until a few years ago where I finally got my head around this relationship I had with alcohol. And for me, it was finally finding connection with other humans, finding a real purpose in my life that finally got me to where I just didn't require that substance every day. And a lot of people go on the 12-step program. I never went down that route. I know Rich Roll did, one of my former guests here, who's an amazing endurance athlete. I think John Joseph experimented with the 12-step program. A lot of people have. And that's a structured way of finding a way of getting off these substances. But for me, that was never it. For me, it was a process of me kind of growing out of it. But that was through me actively trying to connect with other people and be part of something bigger than myself. And I think that really is what the cause of it was for me. And I don't know what it is for you, but I want to have this discussion today and hopefully get some input for you. Again, if you're coming late, type in and tell me, what is your addiction? And why do you think that happens to you? Do you think it's a lack of connection? Are you trying to soothe some trauma? Are you trying to find some purpose? Because that, I think, is the big question here. Before we go on to the next slide, I just want to say, it's something I felt powerless over for so long, and it's something I couldn't outthink my way out of. It's something I couldn't white knuckle my way out of by just saying I'm not going to drink for 7 days. That would work for a short amount of time, but it was something I actually had to change my relationship to the world and why I was here on this earth to finally get over that. And that's been my journey, really, to understand these substances. So wanted to first share that with you. If you want to know more about my my addiction to heroin, my overdoses, you can watch my movie Iron Mind on YouTube. And I kind of really recollect what happened to me and how I kind of moved through that. It was one of my proudest moments to not die and to finally kick that nasty opiate that really gets its grips into people. And it's actually been something I'm really been proud of. For the last 18 months, I haven't had any alcohol as well. And that's been a real turning point for me in my life and something I'm ultra proud of because it really owned me for a long period of my time and something that really bothered me that it happened.
At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.